I mean, with the schools, there's one quick example I wanted to bring up. Somebody wrote this on Twitter. I hope this is not true. I hope that they were just trolling. But somebody wrote down that on one of the Zoom classes that their kid had, they had a Zoom detention
Oh
for that
God.
kid because he was not
Zoom
paying
detention.
attention. It's like, oh my God. But
That's brilliant, but that's a brilliant
yeah,
example, right? Because it
Yeah.
shows you what it's actually doing. Because that's like pure mental conditioning. Because
Yeah.
they're not actually in a physical detention anymore.
yes.
That kid has got to like internalize the idea that they are ostracized without even physically being anywhere where they, in
Yeah.
your own home as well,
Well,
right?
really,
And
they should
It's
do a
a
that's,
virtual
virtual
cam.
expression
Well, they should do a virtual
of
cam of that kid so
yeah,
that
like
he's just standing still for one
yeah, telling
detention,
them
and
not
they
to move. Yeah,
yes,
don't
and then
move,
they just like
don't move.
remix that, like edit that, extend it for several minutes, and
well
I
that
put a
that
little
was
bit of AI in there.
that was the essay, The Means of Correct Training, in which Foucault book was that? Was that may have been Power Knowledge, about the self-referential panopticism of the expectation is there that I have to follow this set because my parents and my parents before them, they went through the school system. So it's like this mutually reinforced system of abuse that has to interpolate people into a specific way of knowing themselves and knowing others in this very like brutal environment that doesn't produce like it produces a subject that is ideal for certain econometrics and nothing else. Like universities are very much like that. And having, studied Foucault at the grad level, that was like a huge part of my, political experience. I feel like you see this everywhere. And of course, I know people are going to say in the chat, yeah, Tunisian boys. I know. People knew this about him in the '80s, but not to excuse, what he did or whatever. But like, that's inevitably going to come up when it comes to Michel Foucault. But
Wait,
it's
was he a nonce?
he was a nonce, yes, apparently, allegedly. But well, that's
Well, one of the sort of smears of the entire French continental scene is the fact they all signed that letter
still age of
about
consent.
the age of consent letter. So,
Yeah.
which is generally glossed over. But going back to like, I just want to comment on this a bit more. Like going back to the schooling thing, in terms of freedom, and it goes back to that idea of competency, is that schools basically teach you the idea that all knowledge and understanding has to be credentialed, and that you can't. People are very wary to like going back to the idea of like doing your own plumbing or changing your own brake pads or whatever. People will be reluctant to do that because they don't have a credential, because you've literally been taught that knowledge is synonymous with having like some letters next to your name as opposed to the knowledge itself. And the same goes just for being competent and having freedom. Like school slowly increases your amount of freedom, so when you finally leave education you feel so free without realizing that you're really not. And you realize, after education, some people actually enjoy those first few years of like doing adult things. They're like, they'll talk about like,
They're
I've got to go fill
adulting.
up my car, or I've got to, oh man, I got to pay my taxes. And it never really dawns on them that that's like not, that's not an enjoyable process, but it seems it, because it's like going from a really horrible prison to a fairly nice one, right? And that transition makes it nice enough.